Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of our podcast. I'm your host, Raymond Cinemato. Today, I'm joined by Preston Zeller, a Christian husband, father of three, fellow Chapman University alumnus, and Chief Growth Officer at BatchService, a real estate technology company. Preston's journey from film school to marketing is truly inspiring. Despite stepping away from film shortly after college, he continued to honor his artistic side through painting and a powerful documentary, The Art of Grieving, which we'll discuss today. This episode focuses on his perseverance after the death of his brother, the creation and distribution of his documentary, and his insights on film, particularly in marketing. You'll hear about the misconceptions of making a personal film, the importance of knowing your audience, and modern filmmaking strategies. Whether you're an artist or a filmmaker, Preston's story offers valuable lessons in connecting your art with an audience and ensuring that it's financially rewarding. If you enjoy this episode and want more content like this, please let me know. You can find more information about us in the description, or you can visit my blog at raymondcinemato.com. Without further ado, let's dive into this inspiring conversation with Preston Zeller. First and foremost, dude, kids. I'm sorry, it's just crazy to me that my brother had kids a year ago, and or 2 years ago now, and it feels like it was 2 seconds ago. It's blowing my mind that we're all
we're at
adults.
that age.
We're all adults now or something.
Yeah.
What the heck happened?
Yeah, last time we talked, we were in college and just figuring out, how to exit college.
Yeah, man. So what has transpired for you in a nutshell since Chapman?
Well, I got out of entertainment in a formal career fashion in 2010. And ended up making my way down to North County, San Diego. Got really involved with my faith in the meantime. That was so I'm Christian. So that was a big piece of just my life changing. And then I met my wife in San Diego. And I don't know if, I think this was a calling of God put on me, but I was just ready to get married. I fooled around a lot in college, and I think I had a lot of character building to do. Still do.
How long after college was that?
So, I left or was done in 2009. And then, August 2010, I'll tell you another story offline about actually why I left entertainment. I had one crazy thing after the other that I'm just I can't stand what's going on here. But
yeah.
But so it's 2010, I left and I was what am I going to do? But I was in the more marketing side. 2011, I met my wife in May, and I was I'd started marketing at some other company in San Diego. And then 2012, we got married. And then a year later, we had our first kid.
Dude, that's so cool.
And then, and then as we got married and we had our first kid, I was I'm from SoCal. I was it's really hard to get ahead here. And, and we knew, that my wife was going to raise the kids. She wasn't going to go work. So I'm okay, well, it's going to rely on my income. And I want to buy a house someday and all that. Again, it's very hard to do in SoCal. Especially for what I was making at the time, I was hardly making much. So we moved to Washington State, had 2 more kids up there. So I have 2 girls and a boy. Now Congrats. They're 8, 9, and 10. So we had them pretty quick. And then, we were up there for about 6 years, moved to Austin, a little outside of Austin. We were there for about 3 years and then came out here a couple of years ago to Phoenix. And just that whole time, it's figuring out my career and, raising kids. between those two things. Yeah.
How'd you feel like giving up film? Like, to me, that seems like it would be a tough one. But what was it for you?
It wasn't like, oh, I'm never gonna touch a camera again or whatever. Like, I think the business side of film, I just didn't really get much out of. You know, I had a lot more to offer, and there's just a very strange pecking order in the film industry, such that, like, I mean, you've been in it for a long time, so you're living it. But I would try to like contribute in ways that was like, no, that's outside of your jurisdiction,
Dude,
and it would get me in trouble constantly. And I'm like, well, this is stupid. Like, I feel pretty held back. So I was like, okay, well, you know, I feel like I have a lot more to offer, and I tried to look for like marketing roles in LA, but dude, this is, you know, 2009, 2010. I mean, it's kind of a somewhat of a similarity, I think, what's going on right now.
Yeah.
So a lot of roles dried up, especially there too. It was like, unless you knew somebody, very hard to get in, or you'd be interviewed, but it was just eyewash. But I think I told you, I entered more like agency business world at a time when video was exploding, and people looked at my video background. They're like, oh, you know, video, we need to do video. And and I just did it in a corporate setting. You know, it wasn't like some crazy flashy production. It was like, hey, we're making a product.
So for you, it didn't. Oh, I'm sorry. Didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was going to say, we're making a product, we're making a commercial, and we don't have a big budget, which is like 90% of the companies out there. Make it happen for us. And so I did that over and over and over again for years.
I mean, to me, like anybody that I've talked to, and from my own experience, it's like being able to just go at something repeatedly is really what makes you better at it. And you were saying before, when we were talking before, that like storytelling, being able to tell a story is a thing. So it sounds like this wasn't even really that much of a pivot off of the idea of being a filmmaker. It was just
it's context, right? We were kind of talking about that on the phone. It's like your skills. Actually, I'm gonna bring up some, you know, probably social meme, but it was like this guy gave his son a watch, right? And you know, he takes it to the and it's this very old dirty watch, and takes it to tries to resell it. No one wants to buy it. Takes it to the pawn shop. The guy's like, you know, I'll give you $50 for it. Takes it to the museum. It's worth $100,000.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I think that there's a lot to be said for us as like our skill sets. You know, how are we adapting to a context that like appreciates what we have to offer? That's how at least I've thought about it. So I'm like, okay, well, you know, if I'm ever in an environment that really like it's not worth it to totally just hammer down the closed doors and go find better doors to knock on or better doors to open, then I'm going to go do that.
It's so smart. Yeah. You know, it's interesting. When I, not to bemoan LA too much, but one of the things I found over the years is that the second you take our skill set out of Southern California, it's very much appreciated, which makes sense. There's so many people out here doing it. The market is saturated. It's
not a commodity. Yeah.
Yeah. I went to Italy for a little bit of time. And when I was in Italy, I was hanging out. I wasn't even working. I was hanging out with like a music producer and a musician. And we all got super pumped about making a music video, and it turned into a whole gig. And then like half of the production community of that region in Italy showed up for this shoot. And like there were people working for free, and everybody was the happiest they had ever been in their lives. It was amazing. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. This is so cool. Like you could go somewhere else, and you're right. The context is such an enormous part of that. And LA can be a difficult place to make that happen, or anywhere where the market's just oversaturated. But it sounds like you found your way into a really cool thing. I'm also kind of curious, like, Actually, you know what? Just for the sake, just because this video is gonna play to people who don't know you at all, can we take a second and just tell me about who you are? Like, who is Preston?
Yeah. So first off, my name is Preston Zeller. I'm an artist in multiple mediums. I'm also a businessman, entrepreneur. So I wear kind of multiple hats as running a business in software, and then also producing content through mainly painting, but also video, musician as well. And so, and I've been doing this for 20 plus years at this point. So kind of I've had the opportunity of seeing the internet evolve and see how, different different ways to promote ideas and products. And I just love communicating story at the end of the day, value storytelling. That is really what I am in essence, is as an artist, as a storyteller. So whatever medium I'm doing that in, that's how I'm going to do it, whether it's a financial sheet or it's a painting. So yes.
Yeah, love it.
I'm a father and husband too.
I love it. So, okay. What would be, this is just a question for fun. What would be the biggest misconception people have about what you do?
I think like a lot of artists, people look at it and go, oh, well, these things come naturally to you, or, you were born with it. And maybe some aspect of that is true, but you still have to work at your craft. It doesn't matter who it is. I think the other thing is, people go, oh, well.
Yo, so sorry, dude. It cut for a sec. Could you repeat that? Another thing is people may go, oh, you're a jack of all trades. And what most people don't know is that there's a second half of that saying. A jack of all trades is a master of none, but still better than a master of one. Yeah.
So, to me, it's much more gratifying to have a broad scope of, interests and engage in those. And whatever those interests are makes you actually better at like what your, main skill set is. So anyways, this is like a couple things that come to mind as you said that.
I love that. I love that adage too. And everybody gets that one wrong. So dude, okay. I want to kind of like, I'm super curious about, well, the way that we got connected was on LinkedIn most recently.
Yeah.
Over a post that I had done about distribution or something, and you had commented Film Hub, which piqued my interest. I was very curious about your experience with Film Hub. But then when you and I got on the phone the other day and started talking, I suddenly became very interested in your story about the Art of Grieving and how that came to be, and then also the Film Hub thing. So if you've got the time, I'd love to kind of like just talk a little bit about both of those things.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool.
Where do you want to start? Wherever you want to take it.
So let's let me think for a second. Probably let's start with like, let's just take it from the Art of Grieving. Like, let's take it from the genesis of this forward so that we can just follow the actual timeline. Right. So kind of set the scene for us and what happened.
Yeah, for the film, how the film even got the idea to be made, right?
Yeah.
So in 2022, I released a film called The Art of Grieving, which is about my really artistic response to the grief of losing my brother in 2019. The road to that was pretty long though. So February 2019, I'm working a regular corporate job, and I just get a call one day that my brother's died, and just instant shock, bewilderment, lots of questions, all that kind of stuff. And at the time, I was kind of talking about this earlier, but I'm an artist in multiple mediums. I had picked back up painting, abstract painting in particular, the year prior, and I knew just instinctively as an artist throughout the years, you you use the pains in your life and hopefully the happy and the joyous stuff too, to like try to communicate that through whatever your medium is. So I turned to painting. That was one of the things, but I turned to painting mainly as a creative source. And I was doing these really big canvases, and I, probably about 6 months into this, like August period, it was difficult in life in general, right? I'm still like wrestling with this outcome of my brother's life, and you're thinking what it means for me. And I'm like, okay, I'm not a patient person, so I'm always learning that, can I set some big goal for myself that'll lock me in to really having to dive into my grief? And so I'd taken a trip, and I decided in one weekend, I had my journal, and I wrote in it, paint every day for a year, and then under that, make a documentary about it. Those are the only two things. And so I kind of I chunked it out, and I said, okay, well, let me figure out how I'm going to do the first piece. The documentary piece, I'm like, that could go so many different ways. I'll figure that out later. But at least I said, I'm going to actually share my paintings every day on social media, so mostly Instagram. So I started in September, I think of 2019, started painting every day. And so I had a GoPro above my workstation. I would scan these paintings in, and I remember I had this shot of like 70 or 80 canvases just stacked in the corner that I bought to get the project going. But that was really the beginning of it, was making the decision to go and paint. And of course, there was an interesting time period too, because I moved in this time frame. I moved to from Washington to Texas, and in the middle of all this, COVID happens, and so it's just like there's a lot more chaos going on in the world. And I think it was what I was going through was sort of a welcome distraction, because I was just like, I was still in my own grief so much that it was like I didn't really have the mental energy or emotional energy to be as like consumed by that. Not that it didn't affect me, but anyways, so most of 2020 was me doing this painting, and again, posting every day. And the people who kind of like started hitching along for the ride on social media was pretty inspiring, because people would come, and it's all abstract. They just say, some comment about the painting, and there'd be people every day. Sometimes I'd live stream. But the cool thing was I was starting to connect with other people who were going through grief. The other reason I actually said, hey, I'm going to share all these, is a lot of artists censor their work heavily. It's just like anything social media, you show the best of what you do. Out of 365 paintings, there's a lot in there I didn't really like.
Yeah.
And so I didn't want to just say, hey, I'm going to self-censor and put out just only the best, because part of it was supposed to be this like reflection of grief, that you have days you feel good, you have days that you really feel crappy, you have days you feel like you're just depressive, all these things, and that's the ugliness. And so I'm sharing these through the medium of painting. Now, what people see or take out of an abstract painting is pretty individualistic. So yeah, I do this painting, and the crazy part was over time, I'm like, okay, well, I originally had some kind of plan for making the documentary, some vision for it. And it was actually to finish the 365. It was always the intent to recreate a separate image out of those. So I wasn't just going to put them in a rows in order. I was going to rearrange them into another final image that felt like to me what it meant to move through grief, and then do this like public exhibition, all this stuff that I had in my head. Of course, doing any kind of public showing in 2020 or yeah, 2020, not going to happen. So I'm like, how do I get this done? Well, in the meantime, the guy who lived next to me, who I ended up producing the film with, Sid Condalucci, I didn't really know him. This guy was my neighbor. Got to know him, and I was like, told him about this project I was doing. Well, sure enough, he was like an aspiring filmmaker, and he knew other filmmakers in the Austin area. And so he was like, hey, I really want to be a part of this. And I was working with like a very low budget. All these guys did it for credit. And for that, I'm so grateful for them. But all these people just started to believe in the project. And because it was really like just a total bootstrap project. And I could have gone and tried to raise money. And that was something some people tried to push me towards. I'm like, no, I don't want to have a union set. I don't want to overcomplicate this. I want it to feel authentic. I want to have just final say so on the cut. And whether or not it comes out as this great, masterpiece or somewhere in between, I don't really care. It's kind of like more just this personal thing. I'm going to put it out there. And so we set out to do that. And so over end of 2020, we do most like the principal photography. Then we did a lot of pickups in 2021. And so it was just this ongoing process, pretty consuming as documentaries are. It's this unfolding series of events. Editing was really, really a challenge. We had two editors that were kind of assembly editing, but how to tell the story was really, I think, difficult with all the footage we did have, and we only had so much footage we shot, right? So I had to fill it in with like really good B-roll that I could get elsewhere. Prior to us shooting, I actually hired an Emmy award-winning filmmaker, and she helped kind of extract out of me how we would tell the story. So that was really helpful as kind of a blueprint. But I ultimately ended up taking a sabbatical from work, and I spent like a month straight just editing probably 10 hours a day, just going through all the footage. And that's like a typical story you hear. I remember hearing in film school, I can't think of anyone off the top of my head, but the director who shoots the film and then like has to go put themselves in isolation to like to edit it and not be biased. And so yeah, I did that, and it got us to like a really close place on like, oh my gosh, we kind of have this. And 80% of what the film could be, the structure was there. So then it was like filling in the pieces. Somewhere along the way, and I can actually stop there if you want to like take it any kind of.
No. Continue. Somewhere along the way, did you?
Yeah. So this kind of takes me up to like late. So probably like November 2021.
Oh shit! It cut for a second. Can you go back?
Sorry, your audio went a little weird. Say it again.
Yeah. Same. I was actually interrupting you to tell you that it had cut a little bit. So
okay.
Can you go back? Just start from the top of somewhere along the way.
Oh yeah. So somewhere along the way, we, I had this as a movie in post production on IMDb, and I. Yeah, had it in post-production, started kind of submitting mostly like a prime cut or whatever to film festivals. And, film festivals are interesting, right? It's like I think people put a lot more emphasis on them than really maybe you should. Or as we were talking about, you think, oh man, I'm going to submit to South by or Sundance and I'm going to get in and someone's going to see my film and it's going to get picked up and I'm going to make a bunch of money. You're like, no, you're not. That's like, it's super rare. The films that get picked up there often, like, they usually have a really good budget.
usually are backed by some more serious. They're not. A lot of times they're not studio films, but they're studio films,
right?
Packaged.
It's a well-known actor couldn't get the funding through a studio and went and made it with his money or an indie studio's money, and then it's an indie film. You're like,
yeah,
come on. So, but the festival world's interesting. I do believe it's good just to get some like credibility of like, hey, it was in XYZ film festivals, and
yeah.
I don't know. It looks nice to have wreaths on your on your thing. And some of those can be legit too. Who knows? I ultimately I'm like, there's the top tier festivals. There's some like ones below that are pretty noteworthy, and then there's just probably everything else that is riffraff.
I think it's kind of like this day and age, everything is kind of, it feels very one-off. I think the story back in the day was that like there was like even for the time it was a little bit kind of an indirect path to success, but it was more painted as like this direct, like, hey, if you go the festival route, you're gonna make your film, you're gonna go to the festival, you're gonna hopefully do well at the festival. If it does well at the festival, it'll get picked up, either by an agent or a manager, or an associated market with the festival or something like that.
Right.
That is not as straightforward as people make it seem, and I think it's less straightforward now than it used to be.
Yeah, well, so I'm gonna before I go in the distribution piece, I'll bring up real quick one of my personal experiences. So I've never been to like many film festivals. I've been to some here and there. Often it was like, okay, if I went to one, of like maybe 2 or 3 I've been to, it's because I was probably screening there. Mm-hmm. But I don't just like go attend film festivals. It's never been my jam. But the one I actually got to understand the business side most was I worked at the Cannes Festival twice in 2007 and 2008. And part of that festival, and like what a lot of people probably don't know, well, there's the American Film Market in Santa Monica, which that's super big. I had some friends when I lived there. They were one guy actually, ironically, he was still kind of a film broker. He gave me some direction, but I got to go walk the film market for Cannes and see all these different distribution companies all over the world. And someone there explained to me like why they're there, like really what the purpose of Cannes is. And any big film festival like that is to like go shop distribution. There's, Cannes and all these festivals have a lot of lore to them because it's the napkin deals, it's the whatever backroom people over drinks go, yeah, we'll do this we'll distribute your film and just everything that goes with that. So that was like more of my impression of it than anything. And then going, okay, well, I don't, this isn't that kind of film. It's a very niche-y film. But one of the things I tried to do as we produced this was develop relationships and get points of view that would make it as successful as possible. And this, I think this is to some degree, as we were talking about, sort of my pivot away from like the traditional film industry. Any of us as filmmakers, we go make projects, and you start out having to learn how to be resourceful. Like, you don't go start out and have a crew of people. That's something you kind of graduate to and are, fortunate enough to have if you have budget or you have people who are like, it's a passion project. So you have to learn how to be resourceful. And that was kind of like when I went more into like the business realm, that was all it was. It was oftentimes like film was an afterthought for the business, or it was like a pilot program. So it wasn't this thing that, all this money was being dumped into. So I knew along the way, I'm like, I gotta, if this just comes down to me and my network, ultimately, it's going to be so much harder. So of course, being a documentary, I'm like, let me try to get at least one entity involved with it from the art therapy perspective. Of course, the film having a lot of art and that angle of art therapy. So, went to approach like 4 or 5 different companies or organizations that seemed like they could be a good fit. Heard back from maybe 3, and one of them was like really interested. And that was the one that ended up being in it. So the Art Therapy Project in New York. And so their clinical director at the time, Lindsay Letterman, she's in the film. We hit it off really well. And it was just such a good synergy between us. And so that was like one of those things, posting every day on Instagram, getting to know my audience, really like authentically collaborating with another organization that can help share this on release. And then just continuing to do that after the fact, right? And we'll get into some of the ad stuff. But the distribution was, I think, by far one of the most interesting learning experiences. So again, like coming from this background of like, going to traditional film, and it's like, dude, I came out of film school and then went to work in the film industry or entertainment industry, got out pretty quickly. And then it was like, I hadn't thought about actually distributing a film other than YouTube, right? in a long time. Yeah. So you're like, you just know instinctively because of AVOD and stuff, and all those platforms. Okay, I know this has changed. How has it changed? Well, early on in my process, I did the film festival route, spent probably about $1,000 there. Not the best use of money, but so lesson learned. I got approached by a producer's rep, and that was kind of like flattering enough, but I'm like, okay, well, what do you guys really do? And so they liked the concept enough, said, hey, we want to see a screener of your film, if we can sell it or not. I'm like, okay, fine. They see a screener, they're like, yeah, we're very confident we can sell this. Like, okay, so we signed an agreement, and the agreement's pretty interesting because it's like, I think it was like $3,000 up front, and then you make that money back when your film gets distributed, and then once you hit that.
Wait, they're giving you an advance of $3,000.
No, so you're paying them an advance of $3,000 to go
for what, marketing or something?
Yeah, to go pitch the film. This is where like the old system I think came into play. It's like, oh, you have contacts. Like honestly, the way I pictured it was purely like, I bet they just have an email list and they just sent out an email of a document I filled out. Like a lot of heavy lifting there, right?
Yeah.
But okay, regardless. So we went that route because I just didn't know. I'm like, I don't know how else this is gonna happen. How else do you make this happen? They started doing that, and the communication was janky, and I'm like, guys, like, where's the love? Who's responding? So we had two distributors respond. One of the offers was just like janky out of the gates. I don't even remember what it was, but I'm like, no. I looked up reviews of them too, and it was just every filmmaker was just, no, don't go with these guys. The other one we met with, and it was just like an old crusty dude who they had distributed a lot of films, but some of the stuff was like, I'm already ahead of you guys. I don't even know what you're doing at this point. That it was like, oh, we'll get your artwork done. I'm like, check, I've already done that. And had like actual feedback on it and to prove it out. Already have a trailer done that's been out. Already have a full-blown website done. I'm like, what are you guys gonna do? And then like, so some of the stuff they started talking about for like advertising, I'm like, your guys' media buys are gonna be way over inflated. You're gonna add a cost to it. And again, because I've been on this marketing side of things for so long, I just know how that goes. I'm like, something's up here. Like, is this the best that there is? And so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna throw it up on Film Hub and see see what'll happen. I happen to stumble across them at a time. There's another really good guy that talked a lot about Film Hub. He wears glasses on YouTube. I think he got kind of burnt out and stepped away from YouTube. But so I put it up there. It goes through a QC process. You make basically a kit for it. And I had been all this time like fielding IMDb reviews, all that kind of stuff, and trying to get some like Film Threat. They did a review of it, which fortunately turned out well, and they gave it a good rating. I think they gave it an 8 out of 10. So I was like, ooh, okay,
Nice.
That was the very first review we did where I'm like, okay, it didn't tank on there, because I've seen them, rip up films too.
Yeah.
So we got that back, and then the first one I got picked up by was, I think, Tubi and Plex. And that was within like a week of posting it, which I was kind of shocked. I'm like, I've already done more here with Film Hub than this producer's rep, and that light bulb just went off. I'm like, I sent them immediately rescinding, or that we were canceling the relationship. We didn't get any of our money back, but I'm like, whatever, lesson learned. And I just pushed forward with that. Prime picked it up within a month of that, and then over like still to this day. So this is 2 years ago now. I'm just realizing this 2 years ago now, over 2 years, we're still getting picked up by places, by different streaming platforms. And I'll get into some of that, but I'll tell you some of the challenges in this process too. And if you want me to if you want to take the conversation direction, let me know. This is
perfect. I love this. Just keep going, dude. I mean, I got questions, but you're answering them. So,
okay. So, I think one of the things that came to mind for me, of course, is PR at some point, right? We did the difficult thing with like a Film Hub, or probably not just Film Hub, any of those, is you think about a typical theatrical release and all the money that goes into promoting the day of launch. You're trying to create this tidal wave of eyeballs to go to the film the day it's released, all this interest. And that's really hard to do when you have no idea when they're going to put your film live.
Yeah.
So, and they don't. They're just like, oh, it's been picked up. It'll take 4 to 6 weeks. Could take less, could take more. So you're like, okay. So that last half of 2022, it was great because we were starting to get more out there. I started to do Facebook ads. And so I tested some different image and video ads. I cut some like trailer specific ones for Facebook. This was actually interesting. I did the same trailer visually. It was a different voiceover snippet from the film. One of them like way outperformed the other one.
Nice.
I still don't understand why, frankly, but it did. That's why you split test these things.
That's what the testing's for. Yeah.
Right. And so I left that up for over a year, that same ad, because it had over, and I was putting probably about $150 a month on that ad, but it had like 500 comments on it and over 1,000 likes, the interactions with it, which that ratio was wild. But the other thing is a lot of people were sharing it. So I started to see this kind of like virality with people sharing it. I wouldn't call it totally viral, but that effect of people, it was like actually out there in the wild now of people now sharing this out there with other people. And I'm like, oh, and I'm getting comments too of people saying, like, total strangers saying, hey, I watched the film and it affected me in this like positive way. And some people's going, I'm going to go paint, whatever the case is. So I'm starting to get this like really positive, this just confirmation that I've put something out there that's helping people, which is really the point, is for like all the people that are in grief who feel like this could help them, they go watch it. even if they walk away from the film pissed off, it probably means they still reflected on themselves to some degree. Like, it's the whole thing. If you make someone feel one way or another, you did a decent job. And there was some, like, I think, insecurity with putting out a film that had me a lot in it, because you're like, it could be perceived so many different ways, And some people for sure, like, said, oh, this is just some self-promoting film. And it's like, okay, you're like so missing the point if you think this is just like so comfortable, me, spilling my life about working through my brother's death. But some people took it as that. Anyway, so up to 2022, we're seeing pretty good traction doing ads. I started to go, okay, I want to do some PR around this. I know it's PR worthy. So I started reaching out to some typical PR places in entertainment. Basically, they all said it's not worth the time of day. The film's already out. And I'm like, okay, well, I didn't get a date, but whatever. These people didn't want to work with me, or they're like, yeah, it's going to be $8,000 a month to do PR. I don't know, and some of them really are that expensive and more. So, I'm getting these prices where I'm like, okay, well, that's pretty cost prohibitive for me. And I knew too, I'm like, look, I'm not trying to go do crazy PR appearances right now. And I have a friend who is going through that right now with her series, and she's killing it. It is so time intensive though. Like, that is her job right now, is just PR. So, and she has someone helping her who's like a really good vet in the industry. But so I found a guy on Upwork. I just put in a JD, a job description on Upwork, and I said, hey, I need someone to help me do pitches for this film. Found this guy who was fantastic. I think it was like he ended up being $1,000, and he curated the pitches and sent them, and of course I had to reply to them. He set up a relay email so he'd like he could help me like keep track of things that slipped through the cracks, which they did. But I probably got like 20 placements out of that. I got to go on live TV in some instances for local news channels and whatnot.
So sick.
But it, like, I guess my point being, I didn't break the bank doing all that. And I'm not saying everyone has like $1,000 to spend on that specific thing, but like it's just, I was. And this is, I think, for anyone, creating a film, you have to be so cognizant of like who is the market for this, whether it's, a narrative fictional thing, or whether it's, real life documentary or whatever it is. Like, no one's going to come and have the silver bullet of, here's your market. We found it for you. If that is the case, they're going to own you,
Yeah.
So it's been, and I think people get too starry-eyed too with like, oh, I need to get on Netflix or Max or whatever it is. And like, I started talking to more people in that way too. I'm like, by the time, if that ever happens, by the time that does happen, I would rather have more leverage than be like, oh, I don't have an audience. Can I leech off your audience? It's like, yeah, but again, they're going to own you.
One of the things that I'm actually writing a blog about right now, and our entire conversation got prompted by the fact that I was posting in response to my thoughts and feelings on this particular subject, is that like I feel like the future of distro is going to be very like self-starting and exist in people's personal ecosystems. Because the tool sets, like things like Film Hub and all these things, are putting the power that used to be maintained by like entire companies into the hands of the creators. I mean, I don't know if it started with things like YouTube, but YouTube was a great example of like, now you can self-distribute. You can self-distribute, maybe not to the movie theaters, maybe not to television, but you can distribute. And if you can monetize that, then you can do your thing. But the film industry is going through some odd economic shifts, I would say, for lack of a better way of putting it. And you know what you keep seeing? I saw this guy who put out his own little personal animation that's like blowing. It was like a stop motion thing. It was absolutely amazing. I'll have to find the name of it and post about it or something. But he created his own whole little world, and just the amount of people that flock to it is phenomenal. And, you know, he plugs in whatever his merch or, you know, the sales of his show, or he makes, you know, sets up screenings or whatever. He's got his community that he can sell that directly to now. But I think that there's an education gap, you know, there's like this huge gap between like, and because we're largely in a period of flux, the technology keeps changing so quickly. It's like, well, everybody's teaching like go to the film festival, they're teaching the old guard system, the old way, which is, you know, go get your agent, they'll distribute for you. They talk about doing these ads, which I've wondered myself too. I'm like, bro, what ads are they going to do in a cost-effective way that I couldn't do myself? I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, the only thing they have to have is like the best ad creators of all time on Facebook, because that's basically where you're going to sell it, right? Like, what are you going to go buy a billboard for my little, you know, rinky-dink film? Like, what are you talking about? Like, and even if you did, how would that benefit us this day and age with the kind of money that we have and the resources that we have?
Well,
you know what I mean?
So I'll give you a good example too, because I'm testing out Reddit right now, which is phenomenal because you can get so niched down. My niche is a little weird because it's considered like a sensitive group, so you can't pick, you know, someone who just experienced death. You know, let me market to them.
Yeah.
Like they just and understandably, people are going to abuse that. But my friend's show is about solo travel, and so I was talking to her, I think last weekend. And her agency is doing phenomenal on PR. I'm like, what are they doing for ads? And she was telling me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you need to, whatever they're doing, stop doing it. You're pissing away money. Or at least they're not. I don't think they're spending it as wisely as they could. But I was just, for kicks, I was like, again, her show's about solo travel. So I'm like, let's just see if there's a solo travel subreddit. Sure enough, there is. And I was like, hey, you could create an ad for people in the water cooler section of the internet talking about solo travel. That doesn't get any better than that. That's your target audience right there. They want to see this. So, and I think that's and I don't know how like Chapman or any other school has really changed around this to address this change, but
I think there's a lag time. I think it's difficult because think about like, you know, nothing against the folks who are teaching, but you know, they're in those positions and they have an experience of a previous generation, very valuable information in terms of perhaps the creative and the art, but not in terms of marketing, which is completely, well, I can't say that it's got no value in marketing, but what I got to say is that the tech that exists today is very different than what was available in the institutions that were used back then. So it's not a slight to anybody. It's just, there's a lack of experience in that subject. So if they're asked to teach something like marketing, it's like, well, they're going to teach what they know. And the thing is that at the pace that things are changing, what we have to use is probably more expertly known by like a freaking 15-year-old kid who's playing on Facebook ads. You know?
Yeah, and that's, you know, the whole thing is, right, it's like finding, how do you find your niche? How do you find, you know, and I don't recall, actually, this is why I loved the producing aspect of film school, is because it was a lot more about the business side of film, which is like, that's really where the rubber meets the road. You know, if you want to be a hobbyist filmmaker, that's okay. If you want to make money as a storyteller or a creative producer, whatever it is, you have to think like a business person. You can't just be stuck in a creative mindset. And that's hard for, I think, creatives to do, because it feels like sellout. Maybe you're wired extremely on that end of just dreamy, you know? And that's again, cool. But the way our world works, you have to be able to translate the thing you're doing into value for a certain group of people in such a way that they'll give you their time, attention, money. So how are you going to do that with this great thing that you've produced? And I've failed so many times in this regard, where I have produced stuff that I loved and it basically went nowhere. And
I think one of the dangerous cultural lessons of our generation, and I feel as though maybe it was a little bit of the generation before us and the generation after us is also get this a little bit, is the I don't know if this sounds cynical or not, but it's like, if you believe in it, it will happen, or you're good enough just the way you are,
manifesting, stuff like that.
Like the lessons of just oh no, you just do your art and the rest will come. It's like, dude, what? Like, I believed that shit, and that got beaten out of me really in a painful way. But it's an unfortunate, it's a romantic message, but it's an unfortunate thing, because then there's, again, depending on how dreamy you are, it can be a significant lag time between, wait, what? Why isn't this working? And wait, let's figure this out.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. And that's, you wonder that about any kind of liberal arts degree or fine arts degree is, are you exiting school with somewhat of an idea or well-roundedness about the market value for this thing you're doing, or is it all? I know this, kind of goes back to the philosophy of participation trophies, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, you showed up and did the thing, but great. Now it's like, this doesn't mean you're good. And
I think, and I think in an industry where there is a more regimented, like, career path type of format to it, there's even more forgiveness for that kind of thinking, but this is not that industry.
Yeah, no, it's not. And I think the one of the interesting things about this project for me has been going, like, I'm not done with this film yet. What I would ultimately like to do is, I still want to have the public showing, and I'm like, I've been so close to this happening. There's a gallery out in, it's here, Austin, somewhere else. They do, like, experiential stuff. I think San Diego, but it's called Wonder Spaces. But I met with them to do, like, the light show and have this as an art installation. It was, like, so close, but they were just like, it's original fine art. We're just leery of the risk. But anyways, my goal being, it's still to do this publicly and have that be probably the last, like, 15, 20 minutes, where it's like, where the film ends now, it goes 3 years later, 4 years later, whatever it is. It has this, like, you're now condensing a lot of time into this thing, this story, because it's the people. When I had it hung in my house, this huge art mosaic, the people that would come in, whether, like handyman or, people visiting for one reason or another, that would just see it and stop and stare. I'm like, this needs to be out in public in some way. So it sort of comes back to that, like, that vision for what you have, like, what ultimately are you trying to accomplish? And it has to be something that's going back to what we were just talking about. I think if it's past money, but includes a way to monetize it, you're going to be even more successful there. And what I mean by that is you're getting it out, you're getting whatever you're doing out there in such a way where it's going to produce fruit.
Yeah.
But if you make the end result being just the money itself, your mentality and approach to it are not going to be probably as good as they can be. Like, you're not sort of, like, missionally driven about what you're doing. And that's that's a hard thing to kind of balance, but
I have a question for you, a creative and process question. So you have a marketing background, but you're also a filmmaker. And how do you go back and forth or balance the tasks of doing both of those jobs? And I'm not talking about like, oh, is it hard or how hard is it kind of thing. What I'm more so saying is headspace. You're in a creative headspace versus a marketing headspace. Do those blend for you, or do you separate them, and how do you structure that out?
I mean, I think it depends on the activity. At this point in life, they're more and more merged into just like a single, guy, what's the best way of saying this? It's symbiotic, because that's the word I was looking for. Like those two things are very symbiotic. So it's almost like if I'm doing something creatively, there's something in the background going like, what is the broader appeal of this? It depends on what I'm doing too, though, Raymond, because I may just, it to some degree, I think it can suck the creativity out of it if you are thinking about it in this broader sense versus I'm just doing this for me. If it has some broader appeal, then great. And I think that's like really authentic creativity does come from. But if I know, hey, this could have some down the line use, then I may look at it later on through a different lens too.
Yeah, I this is something I've quarreled with, because I think that for me, I feel as though I'm a little more on the dreamy side of things, less on the marketing side of things. Like my career has bared fruit because I've worked for other people, but then in my own endeavors, I am lost to the art. And as time goes on, I want to turn my art into something more marketable. So what I've been doing, and I'm bringing this up and I'm asking because I'm curious what your take on it is. That's why I asked the question about, do they blend for you, or are they two distinct processes? I have most recently come to this place where I sort of follow this vague process that is, I'm going to first dispense with all the technical stuff and just think about the creative. I'm just going to do something creative, right? So I do something creative and I get to a certain point, and then I take a step back and I look at it and I was like, okay, what is this? Mm-hmm. I try to identify what it is, and then say, okay, does it have legs outside of my own personal musings, right? And if I see that, then I lean into it. I'm like, okay, there's where we can go with it if we want it to be marketable. So then I'm like, okay, now I just put that in the back of my head, and then I forget about marketing and I just pursue the art with the flavoring of what I had just learned, right? And so that could be like, hey, this is a story about the ocean, but who cares? There's this aspect of the ocean, like these turtles that look really cool, and there's a really avid turtle fan base or something like that. Okay, so let's explore the turtle world or something like that. That's not necessarily the best example of it, because that's way too vague and not specific enough. You're talking
about like hyper niching down into something. Is that where you're getting
at? Like kind of bouncing back and forth between, okay, so let's stick in the creative space. Let's build something that we think is really cool. And now that we've got something cool, let's figure out who that's for, and then tailor it moving forward from there in certain ways. It's very difficult because I'm in the process of sort of figuring this out, but it's hard because this isn't a process where it's like you've finished the creative and now you're going to start marketing. It's like, okay, no, I'm going to write a film. Let's say like I'm going to write a genre film or something like that, but you don't know what the film is about until you've started to write it, right? So you like write your first emotional draft. Well, for me, it's like you write your first emotional draft, you have like 4 genres in there, and it doesn't really, right. It's like not really a cohesive, great story. It's just a mess. And you're like, okay, so let's start punching this up and tailor it for the direction we're going. Eventually, you'll hand a product off to a marketing department, and they can be like, oh yeah, this is obviously a romance or a romantic comedy or something, and we're going to market it like that to those people, probably in-house nowadays. But yeah, so my question is essentially like, if you're like, that's how I sort of approach these days. How would take that, and like, what is your version of that? If there is any.
Well, I think it's important not to let yourself get into analysis paralysis, which I think anyone can be susceptible to that, especially when you're thinking about what is the product I am making. So trying to take a step back from that question and go, how does that really take shape? I mean, here's the other thing too. It's like, okay, with analysis paralysis, this is where I was getting at with that, is being okay with putting something out there that is imperfect and just seeing what happens. What is the feedback? Because all of this, I think there's this impression we can get that like, oh, I'm going to make this thing and I'm going to release this thing and that's going to be it. That's going to be what puts me on the map. And none of us know that. And it probably isn't that. You've probably had so many things leading up to whatever it is that starts to get, okay, this thing blows up. It sells a lot of money, gets you a lot of PR or whatever the case is. But the result of that thing actually being successful could be either A, it's out of your hands and it's because of some weird internet hive mind that it becomes picked up. But also you're doing something that is true to what your artistic vision is. And again, just putting it out there, like even I've put out stuff on YouTube that for like a year or two, it just doesn't go anywhere. And then for some reason it gets picked up in algorithms and it gets shown a lot. And I mean, that's to some degree what happens today, right? I mean, even, what you're talking about promoting a movie, you have, I have cycles and like the reportings and the earnings on the film just based on, again, someone chooses to write a blog about it. Whether it's prompted or not, it maybe got shared somewhere I'm not aware of. Like there's an organization in San Diego they just gleamed onto it and have been promoting it for like a year. They've done I have people who've done like live screenings of it and go, hey, do you have instructional like worksheets we can do with it? I'm like, no, it's a good idea. Maybe I should do that. But but that's what I'm saying. Like if the alternative would be like, if I tried to like, and I'm going to use this term very loosely, but tentpole this documentary into all the other ways that it could be, reproduced before I released it, I would never release it. And I think that's the thing that we have to be okay with now, because everything in Hollywood is so polished. It's got to come out and it's got to be this perfect thing. But it's also because you have huge public media companies that are like oftentimes putting these things out. So it always comes back to the shareholders and that kind of thing in that context. So there's a lot more going on behind the scenes, especially with like, Chinese money and stuff that's in the entertainment industry. Whole different story. But I think to answer your question, like, just don't be afraid to put something out there that isn't very good, and iterate on it. Because there's also too, when I'm watching a movie, my wife and I love watching movies. So, and you'll come across an actor, be like, oh, what else have they been in? And it's so interesting to look at how many movies actors have been in that maybe you like that you never heard of because they were garbage.
Yeah.
Or the other one I love as a songwriter too is, you think about your favorite band. Who's your favorite band off the top of your head? Maybe 1, 2, or 3.
It's a genre, dude. Synthwave. I don't listen. Muse is the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay. Muse. Muse has written a lot of music. And unless you're like a diehard fan of Muse and listen to every song, you probably know like 5 songs that are your go-to songs. And I like a lot of people, I think that's true. Like you think of an artist and you go, oh yeah, this one song is great, but they've written 5 albums, 10 albums. So I think we forget about that too. Is just there's a lot that, you know, creatives put out there that never sees the time of day, never gets the time and attention. Or this is one of the things that was really motivating to me, Raymond, to get this film just out there is I think Big Lebowski is an interesting example.
Yeah.
That movie flopped, like undoubtedly flopped, and was thought to be so stupid when it came out. And there's a lot of movies that are like that. And now I don't know, 30 years later after that movie, it has a very strange cult following of people who go dressed like the dude and have dudisms, and it's like a weird cult religion thing. I don't know, you know, but like the timing of when something becomes like really important to other people, you don't have control over that. And so you might as well like put out there the thing that you make and then move on to your next. And it's like, instead of all the waiting around that we might do to try to time it perfectly, by the time your thing does become popular, then you have an arsenal of material that's been out. I'll tell you one more. Actually, a friend of mine was telling me about one of his parents, who's I guess a famous author, and it was his mom. And he's like, you know, he was saying his mom wrote novels for 20 years just for fun, and tried to get them published. And it might have been even longer than that, but like a novel a year type of deal, right? Just had a ton of writing. Finally gets one of them published. This thing just exploded, right? And they're like, wow, when can you write your next book? So it's like, I already have 20 years worth of writing. That story's always stuck with me, because I'm like, that is so true. Like,
I love that.
Not letting the world get you down because this one thing wasn't like received the way you wanted it to. Anyways.
Yeah. So if you were to kind of pitch to somebody like, hey, if you were going to make something, this is how you ought to do it, what would you say?
I think first and foremost, particularly film.
Yeah.
I think first and foremost, I'd like go understand, like do some research as to who's going to watch this.
Mm-hmm.
Try to understand that like fairly well. I'm not saying go down like, you know, but it like make an avatar for the person who would watch your film. Male, female, what age they are, where do they live, what kind of hobbies are they into, what's their profession, how old, I think I said age, do they have a family, are they divorced, are they an ex-convict? You know, just all those different characteristics. Same way you might write like a character brief for you know, a film, but do that for the people who might watch your film, and like see, you know, you could do to some degree, see what's out there about this thing. That I think is a much better informer of what you might make if you're trying to do like a marketable film. And
what was that? I'm sorry. What was that phrase you used? What they're about this or something?
That was a very on a colloquial, laid back expression. I said, if they're about this,
okay,
about you know, if they're into it.
Oh, okay. I got you. I didn't come through. If they're about, okay. I'm so sorry. I would have literally understood that. I just heard it wrong.
I slur words sometimes too.
If they're about the subject, I got you. I got you.
So actually, this is a good example. I talked to one of my friends. He teaches, I think, film history. But he still does some kind of film brokering, worked for Gravitas. And I showed him the story arc that we had. And he's like, you need to think about your film in these different aspects, right? You're talking about the meta subject of grief. You're talking about your own story of grief. You could bring in, and the meta subject is covered by the art therapist. He's like, you could bring other perspectives. We were trying not to do that because it would have been pretty challenging at the time. He's like, the other thing you need to do though is consider history, and that's why there's a whole like historical portion of the film. Is like, and it turns out like so many people have loved that part of the film. So we hit these different layers. So no matter what, like some people like the whole thing, some people like kind of find more and identify more with certain parts of the film, but we just cover that gamut so well that I think that's part of what makes it good. So thinking about like what are the dimensions of this story you're trying to tell, and like work on the story, like, so who are the people you're interested that would be interested in this, and like really hone in your story. I think the rest can come, from that, like figuring out the marketing and whatnot. Plan. Let's say you had $20,000 to put into the project. Plan for at least half that being marketing.
Okay.
I mean that's
whatever your budget is, just cut it in half, and half of that is for marketing.
Yeah, I think even in film school, they were like 65% of the film's budget is prints and advertising, media stuff. I mean, yeah, with the takeovers on like IMDb, it's like $50,000 a month just to do that. And you're doing probably a 3-month commit. So you're not just going to waltz onto like IMDb. You're going to have to figure out some way, scrappy ways to do that. But even, if you have $1 million budget, like it's still, I don't think the rule for getting it out there is any different than that. Like you're going to have to put a lot into the advertising, and of course, like the more you have, you can afford better media buys, better PR. You can maybe do experiential stuff. I don't know if the whole like theatrical, let me drive around the country and show people my film thing works. Maybe. I don't know. I haven't done it. I know some people who've done it in the past, but yeah.
Interesting, dude. So, okay. Well, is there anything else that you would want to like toss in there? I personally could go on endlessly on these subjects, but it is, I don't know how long we're into it, but it feels like we've been going at this for a hot second. I love every second of it. And I know you got to get back to your family, so I don't want to just monopolize your time all day.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah, we, if you want to do a follow up to this and the first one gets good reception, we could do that too. I do got to get to family stuff, but
yeah.
I think it'd be interesting if people want to watch the film, for sure, please go do that. Like you can go to the artofgrievingfilm.com, or if you just look up the Art of Grieving on Google or whatever, it'll show you where it's streaming right now. But yeah, go check it out. And that's I'm just continuing to, in the capacity and my time permits, like. Still, I've been on a lot of podcasts and stuff that talking about grief and my experience with that and my response to it. It's just my story. There are so many stories about how people have worked their way through the early pages of grief. But I think that I'm just going to continue to do that. And I think these kind of conversations, just the ability to like share, at least hopefully people will listen to this, get something out of it for their own project, and it can be inspiring for them to go take action. Like I never thought that when we were making this, that this would be something people were checking out at a local library or that would be used in like school curriculum. And that's actually a possibility now with the distribution that's happened. So kudos to Film Hub. I think they're doing a good job, like upending the, very opaque studio way of doing things. So, yeah.
Dude, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it, Preston.